Hey everybody, it's Monday, March 22nd, 2010. Thanks for stopping by. I went to the Bay City Public Library book sale last weekend, and it was pretty interesting, some of the things that I found there. There was a back room where they were selling a collection of books that was donated by a doctor in this area. And so I started looking through the books, and I immediately came upon a book called Islamic Imperialism. And so naturally I picked this up and I started reading the inside cover to see what it was about. And about midway through the inside cover it said, September 11th, of course, has nothing to do with U.S. foreign policy. At which point I immediately slammed the book shut and dropped it back on the table and said to myself, well, I'm glad that I didn't read that book. I'm glad that they made that statement right at the beginning so I could go ahead and throw that sucker in the garbage. Because, you know, at that point I knew it was a bunch of nonsense. Probably a thinly veiled book of racist hate speech and myths, which is what you see a lot of times when people start talking about the Islamic world. Myths and racist hate speech. You know, take for instance the weblog Little Green Footballs. Now if you go to Little Green Footballs and you go back to the time when Rachel Corrie was murdered by an Israeli soldier, run over twice with a Caterpillar bulldozer and crushed to death, you'll see the most insane, hateful comments about her. How she was, you know, of course, you know, stupid, and she deserved it because she was stupid, and she was a terrorist sympathizer. And there were two bulldozers at the scene, and there were pictures of her standing in front of one bulldozer and pictures of her standing in front of another bulldozer. And of course, when you go on Electronic Intifada and you see the actual report, they're talking about these two bulldozers. Of course, at Little Green Footballs, they realized that the two pictures didn't match up, but they never read the captions. So then they realized that it was all fake, it was all doctored. The two pictures were, you know, part of a big hoax. And of course, I don't know how that fit into their theory that the Israeli soldier couldn't see her, so therefore it wasn't his fault. But, you know, it didn't matter. Whatever they could say to kind of discredit her, they would say it, even if it didn't make sense. That's littlegreenfootballs.com. Check it out. It's pretty insane. So I was at the book sale, and I was looking at this book, and I put it down, and I kept looking to see what I could find, and I saw a lot of interesting books about Europe and about you know, history of Europe, history of Japan. And then I started seeing books by Edward Said, which was kind of a surprise to me, you know, after seeing that first book. So I got a couple of books by Edward Said. I found a book about Istanbul, which the first chapter is already pretty interesting. It talks about how Anatolia and Asia are probably the old words for the East, are the land of sunrise, and Europe most likely comes from land of darkness, which I never knew. Okay, I can see how Anatolia, Anadolu, would come from you know, land of the East, because it's similar to Doğu in Turkish, which means the East. So at any rate, I started looking at these books and I found this, The New Intifada, Resisting Israel's Apartheid. And I was just floored. I was thinking to myself, how could this guy have both of these books in his collection? Did he read them both? Does he understand how diametrically opposed they are? Maybe he's one of these people that likes all sides of the argument. I don't know, but this is a very good book. And it's got a introduction by Noam Chomsky. The first chapter is by Edward Said. There's a chapter by Robert Fisk. Can you believe that? So it is a very good book, very interesting and very infuriating, because it tells the story of the Second Intifada, the Al-Aqsa Intifada, and it tells a lot of the background on the conflict. It talks about the Oslo peace process, which is a huge fraud, and which was basically a subjugation process, not a peace process. It was one of the main means that Israel used to cement its control over the West Bank and to destroy the Palestinian economy and to herd the Palestinians into Bantustans. That's what the peace process was. Okay, so it was pretty infuriating. It's very maddening to read, but it's good stuff because it really gives you an idea of the situation on the ground. The second chapter talks about a young lady who goes to Jerusalem and Hebron, and some of the things that happened to her there are just shocking. But the one thing that really stands out in my mind is that everywhere she went, she was confronted by Israeli soldiers, and they always said, "Papers." They weren't Nazis. They didn't say "papers, please." They just said "papers." So of course they're different from the Nazis because they're not as polite. Now, the other thing that I wanted to mention that happened this weekend was that I made 2 trips to McDonald's on Sunday with my daughter. The first time for breakfast, the second time because she wanted to get some French fries. And they didn't have them in the morning. So we went in the morning, and I saw this guy. He was wearing this sweatshirt that advertised killing terrorists. It was a company that specialized in killing terrorists, supposedly. I don't know if this is real, but there was a website, and there was a logo which had an Arab man on a camel, and there were crosshairs around his head. And that just made my blood boil. I mean, I felt like I was walking around in Nazi Germany, to tell you the truth. Because, here's a guy with a shirt that's openly advertising that he wants to kill people. And now, it says he wants to kill terrorists, but the guy on the camel didn't have a gun. The guy on the camel was not in America. He was obviously in the Middle East, in the desert, in his own country, with crosshairs around his head. And he wasn't in any sort of threatening position. It was a silhouette. It looked like the guy was just riding on a camel, totally oblivious that he was about to be murdered. And, to me, that really kind of encapsulates the true nature of the war on terror. It's, it's a war against human beings who are the wrong race, the wrong religion, maybe the wrong nationality. And it's not a war that's being fought on our own territory. It's a war that's being fought in their country. We're invading their country and killing them because they're brown. That's the war on terror. Or at least that's what it seemed to me from looking at that sweatshirt. That's what it seemed to be advertising. It's like, hello, I'm a Nazi. How do you do? And then, of course, the second time I went to McDonald's, I ran into a friend of mine named Parviz Azar, and he informed me that he actually knew Rachel Corrie, that he had, spoken to her and gotten to know her, and that she was a very nice, very beautiful person. And I could not believe that I was standing there talking to somebody who knew Rachel Corrie. It was just shocking and amazing to me. But there you have it. Thanks for watching.